All right, so this is a rough cut, and I'm gonna have to give this to Mike's friends because he'd be really mad if I didn't let you guys know about this stuff. He'd be really happy if I could make this play.
So I can't grant anyone power of attorney anymore because they have set us up for failure. We are more than $433 trillion in debt. And apparently our national lands have been put up for the debt. And apparently the thing was created in fraud and war duress from the beginning. So in honor, I have withdrawn my voter registration and I have tried multiple ways to get a jury. And I finally had to push the system, and they allowed me a jury. And then they tried to reconnect the charges against me when I denied them. I cannot plead to charges in fraud. You see, when they set the Constitution up, they did a bait and switch from the Articles of Confederation to a dead man's document. And they built our nation built upon 18 out of 25 shares of the bank belonged to the British. And the British just used their loyalists here as redcoats in the law to cause us to have troubles. If you know what a turn means, it means move the wealth out or up. In our circumstance, it's through Commerce Treasury. They're using commerce. We should be as honorable. We should be in trade of truth, and you could use a currency if it's got some kind of value. I mean, worth. Value is the other side. That's debt. If it's valued consideration, then it's not worth. It's how much do you think it's worth? And what can you trade it for? Because it's dead. It's the minus side. Well, we brought the prize law of letter law in on us. That was not legitimate. Letter law is what Daniel denied. God, Jesus, John, and Daniel denied letter law because it allows deceit as your fruit. It allows deceit as legal interpretation. And when deceit has brought into legal interpretation, then you have no justice. It never will happen. In 1793, Jefferson signed the Treaty of Tripoli, and that was dishonored by the Danbury Baptists. They sent him a letter and said, you broke the contract, basically. But he didn't fix it. And then in a few years, he caused us to adopt that Congress. He used what's called tacit agreement. It was not legitimate then because it was not legitimate as under the rules that we secured under the First Amendment, under the establishments of a Christian majority republic. So in 1793, he signed the Tripoli Treaty that turned us secular. Now, if you don't understand it, if you put a little bit of bad and good, what you got is devil in the details. And that's what it is from here on out. 1796, he went to Congress, Jefferson did, and said, shape it as clay, because he used tacit agreement wrongfully. Shape it as your will. And that was the will of the untrusted, is what the preamble to Bill of Rights suggested. That was not in the contract. So it turns out that Jefferson had a little trick up his sleeve that he didn't tell people really. That was that they had a plan to score within 20 years. They wanted to take it all away from us. And they did that. Because when they did this, and no one understood that they were running away from it in dishonor, then they came back and in 1804 SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, adopted the lies. It's not law. Congress makes law. The courts make rule under the law. And if there's ever any question, you're supposed to be able to get a jury and go question this or the law, either one. Now, Webster played a trick on us. They defined us. Instead of refining us with truth and the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, they defined us. They started saying, you are a citizen. You are this. Well, nothing gives them the right to call them you under their law unless you gave full consent in knowledge. And if they didn't disclose this stuff, which they did not, then those contracts are all voided. And so it was, if you know anything about what they adopted here, was actually admiralty law. That was pushed in on us through the Civil War. And admiralty law is that letter law that's not the spirit of the jury deciding. It's the spirit of the jury, the way they set it up. The jury decides per what they're allowed to hear, and then the judge decides on if they made it right under the redcoat flag. And that redcoat flag is any flag with that gold fringe on it, because the redcoats are the bankers for the crown. The crown is the nation that started all the law under the rule of liars. And all that did, we cannot be a criminal citizen because they lost the truth. They defined justice as upholding the rule of liars. So you have no truth, you lost justice, and it's all run by liars. It's a circular route, and it never has an exit, nor does it have any truth in it. It just simulates legal. It's a simulation of a lawful process. And so when you look at it properly, you can see that they lost the truth for the justice, have adopted Federal Rule of Civil Procedure process fraud under a voided contract. And now after 1804, they started working the wealthy North and South against each other. It wasn't the poor people or the slaves. They were working on the tariffs. They were buying low, the foreign money was, in the South, because you're limited on agriculture, and they were selling high to the industrial North that they had bankrolled. And so when the products came to the South again, they were costing maybe twice as much as they should have. And that made those wealthy Southerners mad. I can't imagine that. And then, what they don't tell you is that in 1837, they adopted what would be called mental hygiene. But what you didn't get from the beginning is that govern means control, to grow or decay, and ment is a foreign word for thought. So why do you need a government that's thought control over a bunch of honest Christians? And the answer is so that they can get into your labor treasure and your properties. So they adopted prize law after they forced us into a civil war. They stirred the racial mix, and they created the war. The debt created in the war was what they used in 1771 to turn us into a bankruptcy corporation extracting our wealth. This bankruptcy corporation, its job is to empty the treasure for the crown. It's an incorporate wealth rating through the rule of liars. And you weren't taught about it in school. You were taught about junk, Custer's Last Stand, the Pilgrims coming across. The Pilgrims were the company. It's the people that came after that hold the birthright of truth. And if you don't use truth, then you don't have justice under the Establishment's Clause of the First Amendment. And so we have a birth certificate name that's all capitals. That's how you write dead names. And they've done tricks with that. They've not told you how to do it properly. They've run your death certificate overseas, and they've monetized it and insured it on your good credit. Your good faith and credit is all that backs it up, because there's no surety other than that. They've already stolen the rest. And so now, in 1771, ever since then, it's been not a legitimate Congress. It's called not de jure as in honorable, but de facto as in war. And it's a war flag that's up on us. And that British came from Vikings. That's the word king came from. And they made English suffer for 200 years when they raided them. And the English succumbed to them. That's why we fled over here. They don't worship a good God. They worship evil. The Admiralty Prize Law came from the fact that they would send the admiral over to plunder some city, and when he came out of there, if he found a boat that was registered under another flag, he would grab it and steal the treasure out of it. That was his prize. So if you don't understand that the redcoats that are wearing the black robes are stealing from you through a false flag and a false currency that's already emptied your treasure and has retained both your voter right to pick by the king, so he's been selecting the worst of the worst for you. And what was the other one? Your money's fake, your gold is owned by somebody else, even if it's in the Fort Knox, and the treasury went to a department, and that's a fiction. And so everything they've done since the beginning, they've told you was good, and it turned out to be wrong. It was a company civil war. It was not the people's civil war. It was never declared, nor was there ever a peace treaty. And so it turns out the Revolutionary War was not us shooting from behind trees. It was that rotation where they use these liars in the law to every 20 years come back and slap you with something that you don't understand so they can steal the rest from you. And so if you can't stand up and stop these guys, we're going down. It appears they already have our money. They already have our wealth, because your warranty deed means that they own your property. And you don't understand any of it because your teachers didn't teach you contract law. They didn't teach you interpretation law. They didn't teach you commerce, banking, finance, or what politics really was. It's a theft. And it's all in fraud. And there's no valid contract on you except for you giving them power of attorney through that voter registration. And some other tricks like U.S. citizenship. It turns out that if you check the box Mr., you have put yourself in their box. And that's not what you want to do. And if you call yourself a sovereign citizen, then you are treated as if you are a terrorist. And what we have instead is courts that are terrorists, and our policy enforcers are already blue hats. God bless you. Good luck.
So, you buddies of Mike, I want you to know this, because this is all set up to fail, and it was all set up in fraud. And since it was set up in fraud, we can do something about it if we can get those people that took the oath of office to follow and work for the society instead of for the thieves overseas. When you think about it, Jesus drove the money changers out of the church, and they just used the government to get back in it, because they are not teaching honor either. If you don't have honor for standing before God, you don't hang around up there. Catch you guys. Thanks a lot. Bye.